Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpadarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Giram Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hare Krishna. So devotees, today we're going to continue to look at the Srimad Bhagavatam. So last Sunday, we talked about the atrocities that Kamsa was committing. After Yogamaya flies out of his arms and tells him that the child that he is looking for has already made an appearance elsewhere. Although initially he's distraught and begs for the forgiveness of Vasudev and Devaki, the minute he goes back to his palace and associates with his ministers, who also happen to be in Asharik Bhav, they advise him that every child within their entire community, country, desha, that had taken birth over the last 10 days should be put to death. And subsequently, one more instruction that they give is they should go out of their way to prevent sacrifices being made to Lord Vishnu, to interfere with the duties and responsibilities of the Brahmanas, because they knew that while all the other demigods had been conquered by Kamsa, in the sense that he had adequately established enough fear in them that they would not go toe to toe with him, they knew that there was one personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, that they could not conquer. And they think that to indirectly conquer Vishnu is to stop the performance of yajnas and sacrifices that are done by the Brahmanas to please and satisfy the Lord. So like this, the killing of innocent children begin. Meantime, in Gokul, Lord Krishna's advent is celebrated in a big way on Nandotsav. And then Nanda Maharaj travels to Mathura to pay taxes. When Vasudev hears that Nanda Maharaj is visiting Mathura, he rushes to go meet him. And at that time, Vasudev very gently inquires about the well-being of his own two sons without letting Nanda Maharaj know that Lord Krishna had been swapped with the girl child, Yogamaya. And then Vasudev makes one critical statement, or he gives Nanda Maharaj, he exhorts him to return to Mathura, to Gokul very quickly, because he suspects there are going to be disturbances there. So hearing this request from Vasudev, Nanda Maharaj and all of his cowherd men who had accompanied him to Mathura to pay the taxes, they return to Gokul. Meantime, back in Gokul, this Putana, this demoness who had acquired mystic powers, is attracted to the house of Nanda Maharaj. Lord Krishna is just 6 days old. He's laying in the crib. And Putana, disguised as a beautiful woman, very attractive, looking like a nurse, enters into the room that Lord Krishna is laying in, and she proceeds to pick him up and put him on her lap. So at that time we discussed many reasons that the acharyas give as to why the Lord closes his eyes. When he sees Putana. So although Mother Yashoda is there, Mother Rohini is there, she proceeds to feed Lord Krishna her own breast milk, her breast that is covered with poison intended to kill the Supreme Lord. But the Supreme Lord accepts the milk given to him by Putana, rejects the poison, and takes her life in the process of feeding at Putana's breast. And in the process, the Lord takes her out of the house, out of Gokul, where she collapses in deep pain because the Lord would not let her go. And we discussed how Putana achieved the stature of a mother-like figure to the Lord, because although her intent was to kill the child, nevertheless, that intent came in the disguise of a mother. And therefore the Lord rewards her for her momentary motherly affection for him by giving her a position in Golok Vrindavan. We also discussed how Putana had inadvertently offered personal service to the Lord and hence the reward that she gets is to become eternally a mother-like figure or a nurse in the spiritual world. And what to speak of those who are actually worshipping the Lord out of love and out of a desire to do nothing but to please the Supreme Lord. What about their destination? If someone inadvertently offers seva to the Lord, and the result is they get to be eternally with the Lord, then what about those who actually love the Lord? What should be their stature? So we concluded with the killing of demon Putana in chapter 6 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10. So today we're going to cover 2 more chapters, which is chapter 7 and chapter 8. There are multiple pastimes in these 2 chapters. So, and both these chapters are lengthy chapters, so there are a lot of shlokas. So to try and finish in the next, I don't know, 75 minutes or so, seems impossible, but we'll try. So what I'm going to do is we're going to read the trajectory of these pastimes in these 2 chapters. And we are going to go into some of the purports that Srila Prabhupada has written for some of these shlokas, where there is either a deeper explanation of that particular activity of the Lord, and or there is clear instruction for us on what we need to do and how we need to actually accept these scriptures and apply it in our personal lives. So let's begin with chapter 7. So chapter 7 is titled The Killing of the Demon Trinavarta. But before this actually takes place, there are a few more pastimes that we need to cover within this chapter itself. So we're going to get into the Balya Leela pastimes of the Lord. The Lord was just 6 days old last weekend. So he didn't talk much, he just acted and demonstrated his potency as the Supreme Lord. So in today's chapters that we're going to cover, the Lord has begun crawling and has begun walking, and therefore has actually begun some of his pastimes with the Vrajavasis. So this particular chapter, chapter 7, begins as follows. So some of the shlokas I'm going to read, and some of the shlokas I will just summarize the essence of what Shukadev Goswami is relating to Maharaj Parikshit. So this particular chapter begins with Maharaj Parikshit speaking to Shukadev Goswami. He says, "My Lord, Shukadev Goswami, all the various activities exhibited by the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are certainly pleasing to the ear and to the mind." So when we hear the pastimes of the Lord, it actually pierces your mind and heart and purifies you. So here, Parikshit Maharaj is saying, everything that we hear about the Lord is not only pleasing to the ear, but it is also pleasing to the mind. And he goes on to tell Shukadev Goswami, simply by one's hearing of these activities, the dirty things in one's mind immediately vanish. Generally, we are reluctant to hear about the activities of the Lord. But Krishna's childhood activities are so attractive that they are automatically pleasing to the mind and ear. Thus, one's attachment for hearing about material things, which is the root cause of material existence, vanishes. And one gradually develops devotional service to the Supreme Lord, attachment for Him, and friendship with devotees who give us the contribution of Krishna consciousness. If you think it fit, kindly speak about these activities of the Lord. So, Parikshit Maharaj has heard about the appearance of Lord Krishna in the jail and how he has been transferred to Gokul, how he begins his entire pastime with his killing of Putana. And Parikshit Maharaj is already experiencing transcendental bliss. And he is requesting Shukadev Goswami. He's saying, I'm recognizing the benefits of hearing about the pastimes of the Lord. So can you please continue, tell me more about the pastimes of the Lord. But he's making a request. He is telling Shukadev Goswami, if you think it fit, kindly speak about these activities of the Lord. And in the next shloka, he continues, please describe other pastimes of Krishna, the Supreme Personality, who appeared on this planet Earth, imitating a human child and performing wonderful activities like killing Putana. And now Shukadev Goswami is going to relay to Parikshit Maharaj, because he's expressed a desire to hear about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Shukadev Goswami continues with Harikatha. So this Harikatha now begins with Krishna. He is 3 months old. And generally at 3 months old, little infants for the first time flip themselves over. So Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj how Nandalala was slanting his body in one direction and successfully flips over onto his stomach. And when this particular event happens, as per Vedic culture, Shukadev Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj, there is a ceremony that is performed that is called the Utthana ceremony. This Utthana ceremony also indicates that the child is ready to leave the safe confines of the house and step out of the house. But you see, our baby Krishna has already stepped out of the house when he pulled Putana outside and killed her. So he's already gone on an excursion, a 60-day-old excursion. But this is the official way of celebrating when the child flips over. It is old enough to step out of the house. And therefore, Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj that Krishna has successfully flipped over. And therefore, a Vedic ceremony was performed. And this indicates that the child is ready to leave the house for the first time. And therefore, Mother Yashoda and all the ladies, this is said to be an observance by the elderly ladies So the ladies observe and perform this Uttana ceremony. So there are Vedic chantings, and all of the Shastric injunctions were followed by Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. They bathed the child. They worship the Brahmanas. After the ceremony, they respect the Brahmanas by giving them foods, eatable stuff, clothing, cows, gold. And then, while the ceremony was taking place, Mother Yashoda observes that Kanaya is very sleepy. So she puts the child to bed and she lays down beside Kanaya until he falls asleep. And I want to read two purports of Srila Prabhupada, which is text 4 and text 5. So in text 4, where the flipping of Krishna from his back to his belly has been described, Prabhupada writes the purport. There is no question of overpopulation or of children's being a burden for their parents in a Vedic society. Such a society is so well organized and people are so advanced in spiritual consciousness that childbirth is never regarded as a burden or a botheration. The more a child grows, the more his parents become jubilant. And the child's attempts to turn over are also a source of jubilation. Even before the child is born, when the mother is pregnant, many recommended ritualistic ceremonies are performed. For example, when the child has been within the womb for 3 months and for 7 months, there is a ceremony the mother observes by eating with neighboring children. This ceremony is called the Swada Bhakshana. Similarly, before the birth of the child, there is the Garbhadhana ceremony. In Vedic civilization, childbirth or pregnancy is never regarded as a burden. Rather, it is a cause for jubilation. In contrast, people in modern civilization do not like pregnancy or childbirth. And when there is a child, they sometimes kill it. We can just consider how human society has fallen since the inauguration of Kali Yuga. Although people still claim to be civilized, at the present moment, there is actually no human civilization, but only an assembly of two-legged animals. That is Srila Prabhupada's purport to the particular shloka where Shukadev Goswami is telling Parikshit Maharaj that they have observed Krishna flipping over for the first time. He's 3 months old. So in the next shloka, where the ceremonies are described and how ultimately baby Krishna is sleepy and Mother Yashoda puts him in bed and lays down beside him. To this, Prabhupada's very sweet purport, very short purport is as follows. An affectionate mother takes great care of her child and is always anxious to see that her child is not disturbed even for a moment. As long as the child wants to remain with the mother stays with the child, and the child feels very comfortable. Mother Yashoda saw that her child felt sleepy, and to give him all facilities for sleep, she lay down with the child, and when he was peaceful, she got up to attend her other household affairs. So Prabhupada is giving an instruction here on how we should respond to the child's needs. We should take care of the infant's need first. And when the child is rested and is resting, at that time the mother can leave to take care of her other household responsibilities. So After completing the bathing ceremony for the child, and all of this occurrences have happened, including Lord Krishna being put to sleep. So Mother Yashoda goes back to observing the rest of the Uttana ceremony. And she could not hear Krishna crying. So she had actually put Krishna, she had moved Krishna after he fell asleep. She had moved him under the cart in the courtyard, because that's where all the ceremonies were taking place. So because so many brahmanas were there and so many guests were there, she could not hear her baby crying. He wanted his mother's milk. And he had been placed under the cart. This cart is called Shakata. And when he does not see his mother coming to rush and pick him up, the Lord becomes angry. And Shukadev Goswami says, the Lord angrily threw his legs upward. He's just 3 months old, which is, you know, how the babies just kick their feet constantly. And Shukadev Goswami says in the next shloka, Lord Krishna was lying down underneath the handcart in one corner of the courtyard, and although his little legs were as soft as leaves, when he struck the cart with his legs, it turned over violently and collapsed. The wheels separated from the axle, the hubs and spokes fell apart, and the pole of the handcart broke. On the cart, there were many little utensils stacked up, made of various metals, and all of them scattered hither and thither. So baby Krishna, with just one kick of his foot, has the entire cart collapsing and falling all around him. So when they hear this commotion, everybody rushes and they're shocked to see this handcart that was piled up with vessels collapsed all around baby Krishna, and there was not a little bit of a scratch on Krishna. And they were trying to think, how did this happen? How did this happen? So they asked the little children, did you see what happened? They were thinking, is this an act of a demon, or is this some bad planetary influences on Kanaya? Planets are in the wrong place, even for the Supreme Lord. At that time, the young children that they were asking, did you see what happened? They tell the adults, yes, we saw what happened. Kanaya kicked the cart. He was crying. He was angry. And that's it. The cart just collapsed. So in the children's mind, there was no doubt who was the cause of the collapse of the cart. It was baby Krishna. But when the Gopas and Gopis hear this explanation from the young children who were less than 5 years old, they could not believe that a 3-month-old child can collapse a massive cart with vessels stacked up on it. And therefore, they did not believe the children. They neglected it. Then they were just talking among themselves saying, oh, this is just little children making up stories. It's just childish talk. So one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada writes that the Shakata was actually a ghost. So ghosts sometimes create disturbances. So this ghost had occupied that particular cart and decided to play mischief with Krishna. Krishna, recognizing that this ghostly spirit had occupied that particular cart, simply destroys it. So Mother Yashoda was thinking, there is some bad planet influencing my son. And she immediately calls for the Brahmanas to chant Vedic hymns and perform all these ritualistic ceremonies. So again, going back to the fact that in Vedic culture, we have to follow Vedic scriptures, performing all of these auspicious ceremonies, etc. So the rest of the cowherd men gather around, they reassemble the cart, they stack back the pots and paraphernalia on the cart, and they go back to their various sacrifices. Because now the sacrifices are being performed to appease the demigods who were ruling some of these planetary houses that seem to be influencing baby Krishna. So they offer rice grains, kusha grass, water, curds, and they worship the Supreme Lord this way. So then, Srila Prabhupada also explains that the Lord is Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. So if the Lord wants to enjoy himself, he just wanted to enjoy himself with the ghost, and therefore he dislodges the ghost from that cart. He can do anything. He can be 3 months old, but he can still do whatever he needed to do without having to change his body in any particular way. Right? And in one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada talks about the commentary written by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the purport to Shloka 7 in the 7th chapter. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains how the Lord in his other avatars, for example, as Vamanadev, the Lord had to stretch his foot for a long distance before he could actually pierce the material universe. To kill Hiranyakashipu, the Lord had to occupy a particular bodily form as half lion, half man, of course, sticking to the benediction that Hiranyakashipu had asked for. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, how do we know that Lord Krishna is actually Bhagavan? Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Because even as a 3-month-old child, without ever changing any of his bodily features, as an infant, he was able to get rid of this ghost called Shakatashura. Although the word Ashura is used, he is able to dismantle the cart through his potency. So Prabhupada explains in the purport, this clearly shows that in his original form as Lord Krishna, he is indeed the Supreme Lord, because nothing changes about the Supreme Lord. As a 6-day-old child, how did he suck the life out of Putana? Nothing changed about the Lord. He doesn't become bigger or shorter or heavier or change his form. So this shows that this is indeed the Supreme Lord. Yes. So then Nanda Maharaj also takes baby Krishna onto his lap, and he requests the Brahmanas to sing all the Vedic hymns like the Samaved, the Rig Ved, and Yajurved. And while the hymns were being chanted, this time Nanda Maharaj gives baby Krishna a bath, and it says mixed with pure herbs. And then he performs a fire sacrifice, and then once again the Brahmanas are fed and charity is given. And he begs the Brahmanas to actually bless his son so that he may be protected, that he may grow up to be very affluent. The Lord who is all wealthy, his father is begging the qualified Brahmanas to bless his son so that he may be affluent in the future. So everything is done to please the Supreme Lord. So I also want to read the purport to one of the shlokas by Srila Prabhupada here. So I'll just read the purport. This is for shlokas 13 to 15. In this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the difference between a qualified Brahmana and a caste Brahmana. So the purport goes like this. Nanda Maharaj was very confident about the qualifications of the Brahmanas and their blessings. He was fully confident that simply if the good Brahmanas showered their blessings, the child Krishna would be happy. The blessings of qualified Brahmanas can bring happiness not only to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but to everyone. Which means if you were a true Brahmana, a legitimate qualified Brahmana, we can seek such Brahmanas' blessings and their blessings will come true. It will come true for everyone. It will also come true for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's what Prabhupada is writing. Because Krishna is self-sufficient, he does not require anyone's blessings. Yet, Nanda Maharaj thought that Krishna required the blessings of the Brahmanas. What then is to be said of others? In human society, therefore, there must be an ideal class of men, Brahmanas, who can bestow blessings upon others, namely upon the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, so that everyone will be happy. Krishna therefore says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, Shloka 13, that human society must have 4 social orders, Chatur Varnyam Maya Srishtam, Gunakarma Vibhagashaha. It is not that everyone should become a Shudra or a Vaishya and human society will prosper. As enunciated in Bhagavad Gita, there must be a class of Brahmanas with qualities like Satya, truthfulness, Shrama, peacefulness, Dhamma, self-control, and Titiksha, tolerance. Here also in the Bhagavatam, Nanda Maharaj invites qualified Brahmanas. There may be caste Brahmanas and we have all respect for them, but their birth in Brahmana families does not mean that they are qualified to bestow blessings upon the other members of human society. Srila Prabhupada is explaining in today's Vedic culture, it has become so degraded. Just because you are born into a Brahmana family, you consider yourself a Brahmana. But you are not qualified to bless other members of human society. Prabhupada continues, this is the verdict of the Shastras. In Kali Yuga, caste Brahmanas are accepted as Brahmanas. Vipratve Shutram Evahi. And Prabhupada is referencing a shloka from Canto 12, chapter 2, shloka 3. Vipratve Shutram Evahi in Kali Yuga. Simply by putting on a thread worth 2 paisa, one becomes a Brahmana. Such Brahmanas were not called for by Nanda Maharaj. As stated by Narada Muni, Yasya yal lakshanam proktam, the symptoms of a Brahmana are stated in Shastra. And one must be qualified with these symptoms. So that tells you who is a qualified Brahmana. Qualified Brahmana will exhibit these symptoms. The blessings of Brahmanas who are not envious, disturbed, or puffed up with pride and false prestige, and who are fully qualified with truthfulness will be useful. Therefore, a class of men must be trained as Brahmanas from the very beginning. Brahmachari Gurukule Vasandanto Guror Hitam. The word Danta is very important. Danta refers to one who is not envious, disturbing, or puffed up with false prestige. With the Krishna consciousness movement, we are trying to introduce such Brahmanas in society. Brahmanas must ultimately be Vaishnavas. And if one is a Vaishnava, he has already acquired the qualifications of a Brahmana. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. The word Brahma Bhuta refers to becoming a Brahmana or understanding what is Brahman. Brahma Janatiti Brahmanaha. One whose Brahma Bhuta is always happy. Prasannatma. Na shochati na shakankshati. He is never disturbed about material necessities. Shama sarveshu bhuteshu. He is ready to bestow blessings upon everyone equally. Mat bhaktim labate param. Then he becomes a Vaishnava. In this age, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur introduced the sacred third ceremony for his Vaishnava disciples with the idea that people should understand that when one becomes a Vaishnava, he has already acquired the qualifications of a Brahmana. Therefore, in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, those who are twice initiated so as to become Brahmanas must bear in mind their great responsibility to be truthful, control the mind and senses, be tolerant, and so on. Then their life will be successful. It was such Brahmanas that Nanda Maharaj invited to chant the Vedic hymns, not ordinary Brahmanas. And there is a lot more that Srila Prabhupada is writing here. We will not go into the rest of the purport. I particularly wanted to call out the fact that Prabhupada was drawing a clear distinction between those who we can actually consider to be qualified Brahmanas versus those who are just caste Brahmanas wearing the thread, but they don't have the qualifications of being a Brahmana. So the ceremonies go on. So Nanda Maharaj has invited the Brahmanas to bless his child, Krishna. So now Shukadev Goswami fast forwards to a year later. So he says, one day, a year after Krishna's appearance, Mother Yashoda was patting her son on her lap. So Mother Yashoda had baby Krishna on her lap and she was patting him on the chest. Suddenly, she felt the child to be heavier than a mountain peak and she could no longer bear his weight. So all of a sudden, the Lord became so heavy. Remember, his size has not changed. But just what she was experiencing the Lord become extremely heavy. So what does she do? She's thinking this child is feeling like as if the entire universe is sitting on my lap. And she was thinking, is this another ghost? Is this another demon that is attacking him? So immediately she picks up the child and puts him on the ground. And she begins to pray to Lord Narayana. So when she's perturbed, she is immediately thinking about the Supreme Lord. She is praying to Lord Narayana, what is this happening to my child all the time? So again, she calls the Brahmanas and asks them to perform some ceremonies so that whatever it is that Krishna seems to be afflicted with, all these demons, bad planets, all of this could just dissipate. And Shukadev Goswami, while he's describing what is happening, he's telling Parikshit Maharaj, she had no alternative than to remember the lotus feet of Lord Narayana, for she could not understand that Krishna was the original source of everything. Because she did not know that the child on her lap was the Supreme Lord himself. But at the same time, she was so anxious for his safety because to her, he was just her little baby. And therefore, she begins to meditate on the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. So now the Lord is only sitting on the ground. He's a year old since his advent. He's sitting. And a new demon comes called Trinavarta. Trinavarta was a servant of Kamsa. He is known as the whirlwind demon. What's fascinating is Shukadev Goswami says in the very next shloka, in the prior two shlokas, Shukadev Goswami has said, the Lord became so heavy that Mother Yashoda was forced to just pick him up and put him on the ground. She could not bear his weight anymore. Just two shlokas later, Shukadev Goswami is telling Parikshit Maharaj, while the child was sitting on the ground, a demon named Trinavarta, who was a servant of Kamsa's, came there as a whirlwind at Kamsa's instigation and very easily carried the child away into the air. And if you read the purport, Prabhupada writes, look at the contrast. The Lord became heavy for Mother Yashoda, knowing that a demon was about to come, forcing her to put him down so that he could deal with the demon on his own, so that it would not disturb her. And at the same time, when the demon arrived, he became so light that Trinavarta was able to quickly pick up the Lord and rise up into the air. He was a whirlwind, right? So whirlwind means they go around like this. So because he was the whirlwind, he raised a lot of dust. And pretty soon, everyone's eyes were blinded with the dust. They could not see. Everything had gone dark. They could hear this fierce roaring of the wind. The whole of Gokula was covered with particles of dust because of this demon. There was dense darkness. The sunlight was shut off. And Mother Yashoda was panicking. She could not find her baby where she had left him. Nobody could see anything. They became very disturbed. They became anxious. And when Mother Yashoda is searching for her baby and she cannot find him, she falls down on the ground. And Shukadev Goswami says, thus she fell down on the ground like a cow who had lost her calf and began to lament very pitifully. So it's as if her heart had been stripped out of her chest. She could not bear the thought of having lost her son. She could not find him. But the whirlwind pretty soon disappears. And everything becomes calm, quiet. The winds have subsided. Meanwhile, Mother Yashoda is crying. And the gopis hear her crying. And they know now why she's crying, because they cannot locate Krishna. And involuntarily, they also start crying and grieving for the fact that Krishna is not there with them. So they are commiserating with her in her despair. So Shukadev Goswami uses the words Ashrupurna Mukhyaha, meaning their entire face was just drenched with tears. Whose faces? The gopis' faces. Everything was calm, but they still could not find Krishna. Where did he go? So having assumed the form of a forceful whirlwind, the demon Trinavarta took Krishna very high in the sky. And then suddenly, Trinavarta, who was able to lift Krishna so easily, now Krishna becomes very heavy. And Shukadev Goswami says When Krishna became heavier than the demon had to stop his force and could go no further. So what was baby Krishna doing? He just locked his chubby arms around Trinavarta's neck. He was a huge demon. Little children have very tight grips. Once they latch onto something, it's very difficult to extract that item from their little chubby little fingers. So what was Krishna doing? He simply caught hold of the demon's neck with both his chubby arms and didn't let go. And like this, he chokes him to death. So the demon chokes, he's not able to make a sound, his eyes popped out, and he fell down with a huge noise on top of a slab of stone. And the gopis come rushing, and they see the same darshan that they saw on Putana. Krishna was very happily playing on this vast, huge chest of Putana. And Krishna was happily playing on this vast chest of Trinavarta. So they immediately pick up the baby and they rush and deliver Lord Krishna into the arms of Mother Yashoda. And they were astonished. They fell from such a great height and not a scratch on this baby. And they were thinking, this Rakshasa had come to kill our child. And Nanda Maharaj starts speaking to the other cowherd men. He says, we must previously have performed austerities for a very long time, worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, performed pious activities for public life, constructing public roads and wells, and also given charity, as a result of which this boy, although faced with death, has returned to give happiness to his relatives. So Nanda Maharaj is saying, we must have done something really good in our past lives. We must have performed a great deal of pious activities. That is why the Lord is rewarding us by saving the life of our child. And at that time, Nanda Maharaj is reminded of the words of Vasudeva in Mathura. There will be disturbances in Gokul. You should rush back. So this chapter ends on this note, this particular chapter, chapter 7. So one day, Mother Yashoda was feeding Krishna on her lap. And Krishna was very happy to accept her milk. And just as he had finished drinking his milk, the baby yawns. And when Krishna opens his mouth wide to yawn, Mother Yashoda is looking at him, and she sees the entire cosmos within his mouth. And Shukadeva Goswami explains, O King Parikshit, when the child Krishna was almost finished drinking his mother's milk, and Mother Yashoda was touching him and looking at his beautiful, brilliantly smiling face, the baby yawned, and Mother Yashoda saw in his mouth the whole sky, the higher planetary system, and the earth, the luminaries in all directions, the sun, the moon, fire, air, the seas, islands, mountains, rivers, forests, and all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. So the Lord was showing the Virat Rupa form to Mother Yashoda. And although he did not want to disturb, Prabhupada writes in the purport for this particular shloka, that although the Lord did not want to disturb the motherly affection that Yashoda had for him, nevertheless, he couldn't help exhibit his opulence when he opened his mouth to yawn. So when Mother Yashoda sees this whole universe within the mouth of a child, Shukadeva Goswami says, her heart begins to throb and her eyes are just reeling with shock. And she thinks, I must be imagining things, or is this another demon? And so she simply closes her eyes. And that's how this particular chapter ends. So this chapter was titled The Killing of the Demon Trinavarta. So we are going to go to the next chapter, which is a slightly longer chapter. So we have about half an hour left. So we'll see how much justice we can do to this. So chapter 8 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, is titled, Lord Krishna shows the universal form within his mouth. You must be wondering, Are, just the last shloka of the previous chapter ends with the Lord showing his Virat Roop form, or a glimpse of it, to Mother Yashoda. So much so she gets confused and she closes her eyes. I don't want to see this. I don't know what other demon is attacking my baby. Better I just close my eyes. So this is a very special pastime of the Supreme Lord. You will understand what this pastime is when we get to it. So this is chapter 8. It's a slightly longer chapter, as I mentioned. But let us see how much we can cover today. So this chapter also begins with a lot of other pastimes. So we'll cover those pastimes before we actually come to the pastime of how the Lord shows his Virat Roop form to Mother Yashoda again for the second time. So he's already shown it to her briefly when he yawns. And this time he's going to get caught by Mother Yashoda, and she's going to actually see the full Virat Rupa form in the Lord's mouth. So I actually meant to read the purport from chapter 7, 31. So just give me a quick minute. Let me see how long that purport is. If we have time, we'll read it, because Prabhupada has written a very nice purport. Okay, it's a very short purport, so I'll read it. So this is the purport that Prabhupada writes, how this Trinavarta came obviously to attack their baby, but somehow or the other, the Lord is saved. He's not been injured, he's not been killed. So to the purport, Prabhupada writes, Krishna conscious life means innocent devotional life, and a sadhu is one who is fully devoted to Krishna, as confirmed by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 9.30. Bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhur eva samantavyah. Anyone fully attached to Krishna is a sadhu. Nanda Maharaj and the gopis and other cowherd men could not understand that Krishna was a supreme personality of Godhead, playing as a human child, and that his life was not in danger under any circumstances. Rather, because of their intense parental love for Krishna, they thought that Krishna was an innocent child and had been saved by the Supreme Lord Narayana. In the material world, because of intense lust and desire for enjoyment, one becomes implicated in sinful life more and more. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhavaha. Therefore, the quality of fear is one of the aspects of material life. Ahara nidrabhaya maitunam cha. But if one becomes Krishna conscious, the process of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, diminishes one's polluted life of material existence, and one is purified and protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shanvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha. In devotional life, one has faith in this process. Such faith is one of the 6 kinds of surrender. Rakshish Yatiti Vishvasaha, which means we must have faith that the Lord will protect us. One of the processes of surrender is that one should simply depend on Krishna, convinced that he will give one all protection, that Krishna will protect his devotee is a fact. And Nanda Maharaj and the other inhabitants of Vrindavan accepted this very simply, although they did not know that the Supreme Lord himself was present before them. There have been many instances in which a devotee like Prahlad Maharaj or Dhruva Maharaj has been put in difficulty even by his father, but has been saved under all circumstances. Therefore, our only business is to become Krishna conscious and depend fully on Krishna for all protection. So Prabhupada is explaining, the Vrajavasis were constantly worshipping Lord Narayana, specifically Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. They were assured that Lord Narayana would protect their child. They didn't know that it was Lord Narayana with them only. They were praying to the Lord to protect himself. So coming to chapter 8 now. Chapter 8 begins as follows. Vasudev, who is in Mathura, inspires Garga Muni to come and visit Nanda Maharaj in Gokul. Vasudev is thinking, my son's horoscopes naming ceremony has not taken place. Balram and Krishna. So he inspires Garga Muni to go and visit Nanda Maharaj. Now, obviously, directly, Garga Muni cannot go to Nanda Maharaj and say, Vasudev has sent me. He wants me to make sure that his 2 children, Krishna and Balaram, are actually given their proper names. So anyway, when Garga Muni actually comes to Gokul, Nanda Maharaj receives him very nicely, offers him all respects, and he knows that this Garga Muni is the family priest for the Yadu dynasty. Now, I mentioned in the previous class that Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva are actually half-brothers. Half-brothers means they have the same father, but they were born of different mothers. Vasudev's mother was a Kshatriya caste, and Nanda Maharaj was of the Vaishya section of society. So anyway, Nanda Maharaj receives Garga Muni very nicely. He offers him a nice seat and worships him, and he tells Garga Muni, my dear Lord, you are a great devotee and you know everything. And therefore, because you are a great devotee and you know everything, it is my duty to serve you. So please, you just order me. What can I do for you? So this is the way that one should speak to exalted personalities. You should first ask, how can I serve you? It's my duty to serve you. Please allow me to serve you. And then he says, kindly order me. Tell me what I should do. And like this, Nanda Maharaj continues to speak. He says, you are a great soul. You move from place to place and you visit all of us, poor grihastas. These grihasthas don't naturally get an opportunity to associate with great souls like you. So you are actually benedicting us with your presence here. And I know that you are a great astrologer. You have compiled books on astrology. You know all about astrology. You know everything about a person's past life and present life and future life. And because you are such an expert in Jyotish Shastra, you are a natural spiritual master for all of the human beings. And it is so kind that you are visiting me. May I please ask you to perform the reformatory activities for my two sons. So Nanda Maharaj comes out and says what he wanted, which is what Vasudeva wanted, and that is why he had sent Garga Muni. But of his own volition, he is asking Garga Muni, please name my children and chart their horoscopes and tell me what does the future hold for them. So hearing Nanda Maharaj's request to do the Jatakarma ceremony and the Namakarma ceremony, Garga Muni says, my dear Nanda Maharaj, you know that I am the priest for the Yadu dynasty. Everybody knows that I am the priest of the Yadu dynasty. If I were to perform these ceremonies for your sons, what will Kamsa think? Kamsa will become suspicious. He will immediately think, aha, so why is Garga Muni gone all the way to Gokul to perform naming ceremony for a family that is not Yadu? They are the Vaishya dynasty, that is the Yadu dynasty in Mathura. Why would Garga Muni go all the way to Gokul to perform Namkarna for two babies that are not part of the Yadu dynasty? So Garga Muni tells Nanda Maharaj, Kamsa will become very suspicious. He's an evil man. He's a great diplomat. He'll put two and two together. And by the way, he also knows that you are very good friends with Vasudeva. If he hears that I have come here to perform this Jatakarma ceremony, Namakarma ceremony, he will come directly here to attack your two children. And that would be a catastrophe. So Nanda Maharaj hears this from Garga Muni and he says, so we'll make sure we don't arouse Kamsa's suspicion. Let's do this entire ceremony in secret. We'll do it in the Goshala. I will not inform anybody. It's just Rohini, Mother Yashoda, Krishna, Balaram, and myself with you in the Goshala. And you can perform the ceremonies. Nobody needs to know that you're here. And therefore, they all go to the cow shed. So Mother Yashoda is there. Mother Rohini is there. Balramji is there. Lord Krishna is there. Nanda Maharaj is there. And Garga Muni performs the name-giving ceremony for Krishna and Lord Balaram. And I'm going to quickly read what Garga Muni says, because as he's giving the name ceremony, he is also doing the Jataka. So Garga Muni said, this child, the son of Rohini, will give all happiness to his relatives and friends by his transcendental qualities. Therefore, he will be known as Rama. The word Rama means somebody who brings joy to others. Garga Muni continues, and because he will manifest extraordinary bodily strength, he will also be known as Bala. Moreover, because he unites two families, Vasudeva's family and the family of Nanda Maharaj, he will be known as Shankarshana. So bringing the two families together. Vasudeva's father and Nanda Maharaj's father are one and the same. Because Lord Balaram is bringing these two families back together, he is also going to be known as Shankarshana. And then he tells Nanda Maharaj, your son. So he doesn't say Vasudev's son. He says, your son, Krishna, appears as an incarnation in every millennium. In the past, he assumed 3 different colors, white, red, and yellow. And now he has appeared in a blackish color. In another Dwapar Yuga, he appeared in the color of Shukha, a parrot, as Lord Ramachandra. All such incarnations have now assembled in Krishna. So in one of the avatars, Lord Ram actually comes in the Dwapar Yuga, and he takes on the color of Shukha, a parrot, meaning green, as Lord Ramachandra. For many reasons, this beautiful son of yours sometimes appeared previously as the son of Vasudeva. So indirectly now, Gargamuni is saying, he's your child, all right, I'm naming your child, but I want you to know, somewhere or the other, he is also come as the son of Vasudeva in Mathura. Therefore, those who are learned sometimes call this child Vasudeva. For this son of yours, there are many forms and names according to his transcendental qualities and activities. These are known to me, but people in general do not understand them. Gargamuni is saying, this child of yours, Krishna, he has many other names. How does he get these names? Based on his qualities, based on his activities, both of which are transcendental. And based on the forms, he gets specific names. So Narasimhadev, he comes half lion, half man. And Gargamuni is saying, I know some of his other names when he's appeared in the past, but people in general do not understand them. To increase the transcendental bliss of the cowherd men of Gokula, this child will always act auspiciously for you. And by his grace only, you will surpass all difficulties. So Gargamuni is telling Nanda Maharaj, you're going to face a lot of difficulties, but you'll overcome all those difficulties very easily, simply because you have this child with you. O Nanda Maharaj, as recorded in history, when there was an irregular, incapable government, Indra having been dethroned and people were being harassed and disturbed by thieves, this child appeared in order to protect the people and enable them to flourish, and he curbed the rogues and thieves. So now he is telling Nanda Maharaj, your son actually comes to re-establish dharma. He conquers and vanquishes the demons. Demons cannot harm the demigods who always have Lord Vishnu on their side. Similarly, any person or group attached to Krishna is extremely fortunate. This Gargamuni is still speaking to Nanda Maharaj. He's telling Nanda Maharaj, anybody who's attached to Lord Vishnu, they are very fortunate. Because such persons are very much affectionate toward Krishna, they cannot be defeated by demons like the associates of Kamsa. So he is reassuring Nanda Maharaj, your son is protected by Lord Narayana. Indirectly, he's telling Nanda Maharaj, this is actually Lord Narayana. Actually, in the very next shloka, he will tell if it is Narayana Sama, he says. This child is as good as Narayana. In conclusion, therefore, O Nanda Maharaj, this child of yours is as good as Narayana. In his transcendental qualities, opulence, name, fame, and influence, he is exactly like Narayana. So in the first sentence, he says he's as good as Narayana. In the next sentence, he says he's exactly like Narayana. And then he gives Nanda Maharaj an instruction. You should all raise this child very carefully and cautiously. Saying this, Garga Muni leaves. So naming ceremony is done. That personality is called Rama and Balarama, and also called Shankarshana. This personality, too many names to give. Let's just stick to Krishna and Narayana. But his names vary based on what form he took, what qualities he possessed in those forms, and what transcendental activities and leelas he performed. According to that, the Lord is given many names, or rather we call him by different names. So after instructing Nanda Maharaj to take good care of Krishna, Garga Muni leaves. And soon thereafter, Shukadev Goswami talks about how these two babies, Rama and Krishna, start crawling all over Brajabhumi. They were crawling everywhere, and everybody was enjoying their crawling. And he gives some examples. So Krishna and Balaram will go into the cow shed, which was covered with cow dung and cow urine. And they will crawl around in that messy little place, and their ankle bells were very charming, and they were slithering around like serpents. And then Shukadev Goswami says, sometimes Krishna and Balaram, when they were in the cow shed, they would hear the ankle bells of other gopis, and thinking it was their mother, they would just quickly crawl towards that particular gopi. And when the gopi would turn around and say, hey, Krishna, Balaram, look at you, you look so sweet. The minute they heard the voice of the gopis, they realized, oh, this is not my mother. And they would turn around and crawl back in the other direction. So like this, they were giving transcendental bliss, not just to Mother Yashoda and Rohini, but to all the other gopis and the cowherd men there. So there is another pastime that Shukadev Goswami talks about, that sometimes Krishna and Balaram, they would catch hold of the calves' tails, and the calves, being startled, would drag them behind, and therefore Krishna and Balaram would both be dragged in this mud of Braj Raj, because they couldn't let go of the calves' tails. And when the ladies saw and witnessed these pastimes, they would stop doing their household activities, and they would laugh in great joy, enjoying this wonderful pastimes of both the lordships, Sri Balaram and Sri Krishna, doing all of this as they were crawling around Raj. So, so within a short time, Shukadev Goswami then moves on. He says, shortly thereafter, with all of their crawling pastimes, the naming ceremony is done, the crawling is done. Now they have started to walk. Both Rama, so Shukadev Goswami says, O King Parikshit, within a very short time, both Rama and Krishna began to walk very easily in Gokul on their legs, by their own strength, without the need to crawl, which means the crawling stage has ended. Both the lordships were walking now. And now, because they have started walking, the two lordships were now playing with the other children of the cowherd men and the gopis. And when they witnessed this childhood playing activities of Krishna and Balaram with the other children, Shukadev Goswami talks about how blissful the Brajavasis were just to witness the two lords playing with the other children there in Gokul. And then the complaints begin. The mischief begins and the complaints begin. So in Shloka 28, Shukadev Goswami says, observing the very attractive, childish restlessness of Krishna, all the gopis in the neighborhood, to hear about Krishna's activities again and again, would approach Mother Yashoda and speak to her as follows. So when you read the purport of this particular shloka, Srila Prabhupada writes, on the one hand, the gopis wanted to complain to Mother Yashoda of how naughty Krishna was. On the other hand, when they themselves were relaying the pastimes of the Lord, hearing these activities of Krishna, they themselves will go into bliss. So they were part complaining, part enjoying. So every day there were news reports coming from all the gopis. Your son did this, your son did that, your son did this. This is the level. He's kind of really amped up his mischievousness, and there seems to be no end to his naughtiness. So the complaints begin now. So for the next 3 shlokas, Shukadeva Goswami talks about one by one the complaints that the gopis are coming to Mother Yashoda. They've come in a group, but they all speak about their experiences with this little naughty child, Krishna. So the first gopi begins. My dear friend Yashoda, you know your son, he comes to our house. And he comes to our house before the cows are milked. So before the cow is milked, the calves are separated from the cows. So that otherwise the cows will drink all the milk and there will be nothing left to milk. So one of the gopis is complaining to Mother Yashoda, your son, he comes to our house before the milking of the calves, before the milking of the cows. And what does he do? He unties the calves. So what will the calves do? They are going to run to their mother and feed off of their milk. And when our husbands become angry, what does your son do? He just smiles like this. So the next complaint. So the first complaint is, your Krishna, we have tied up the calves before the cows have been milked. He's so naughty. He knows if he releases the calves will go drink all the milk. And he doesn't seem to mind at all. He's done this and he just smiles. After being accused of doing it, Krishna's response is smile. So Krishna actually disarms the gopas and the gopis just through his smile. What to speak of his other attractive features. Then the next gopi says, sometimes he devises some process by which he steals curd and butter and milk. And then after stealing, what does he do? He eats and drinks them. And not only that, the monkeys that assemble, he divides everything very nicely and he distributes it to the monkeys. And after some time, the monkeys are saying, enough, Baba, enough, I can't have any more. He gets angry because the monkeys don't want the butter anymore and he breaks the pots out of anger. So this was the other complaint. He not only steals, okay, let him steal and let him be happy with the curd and butter. But why does he have to distribute to the monkeys? Then he's forcing the monkeys to eat. When they can't eat anymore, their bellies are full, he becomes angry and breaks the pots. Next complaint. When he comes to steal butter and milk from our house, and if he realizes everything is out of his reach, he gets very upset. Because we know he's going to come, we've hidden it very nicely. And when he can't find what he's come looking for, which is butter and milk, he takes revenge. He goes to our little babies lying in the crib. He pinches them. And when the little child starts crying, Krishna runs away from the scene. So if he comes looking for butter, we think, okay, let us stop his stealing activities. We thought we're doing the right thing by hiding it in such a nice way, he can't find it. And when he can't find it, he gets even more angry and he ends up pinching our little babies and making them cry. So some more complaints in the next shloka. If the milk and the curd is kept very high, hanging from the ceiling, and we know these little babies cannot reach it, what do? They stack up wooden planks one on top of the other. On top of it, they put the mortar, which we use for grinding spices. And because they are upset that the pots are hanging so high, they poke holes in the pot so that everything leaks out and falls on the ground. And so another gopi says, we thought we could protect our curds and milk and butter by putting it in a room that is so pitch dark, they will not even try to come to steal into that room because they'll not be able to see anything. So this elderly gopi says, but Mother Yashoda, do you know what happens? You have put such bright jewelry on both of them. Both Krishna and Balaram are decked up with such jewelry that when they enter into a dark room, that jewel lights up the room and then they take advantage of it and destroy the butter and steal the butter and make a mess. So no matter what Mother Yashoda does, complaints keep coming in. Daily news reports, headlines. Today, Krishna did this. We're not done with the complaints yet. In the next shloka, Shukadeva Goswami says, sometimes we catch him in the act of stealing. So when the master of the house says, ah, you are a thief, I have caught you. Krishna then boldly replies, I am not a thief, you are a thief. So Krishna, when he was accused of robbing them, and if he was caught, and if he was told, why are you thieving? You are a thief. He would say, I am not a thief, you are a thief. The next complaint. Sometimes when the Lord was really angry, he would pass urine and stool in a neat, clean place in our houses. Neat, clean place means the puja room. So sometimes the Lord would get so upset. If he didn't get what he wanted, he would do all this mischief in the place of worship. And then the final gopi says, look at him now. He's sitting so innocently beside you. He's such an expert thief. But look at his face. Like as if he did not do a thing. He doesn't know what we are talking about. And as these gopis are in a litany telling Yashoda, these are all the problems with your child. He's the problem child. Krishna's eyes becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. He's afraid. So many reports coming at the same time. Is Mother Yashoda going to chastise him? He's so fearful. His eyes are big with fear. He's hiding slightly behind Mother Yashoda as he's listening to all of these complaints about him. And Mother Yashoda turns around and looks at her little Lala, seeing the fear in his eyes and seeing his most beautiful face. Shukadeva Goswami says, instead of chastising him, they would simply look upon his face and enjoy transcendental bliss. So just looking at the Lord's lotus moonlight face, both the gopis who are complaining about him and Mother Yashoda, who was the recipient of the complaints, would simply smile, forgetting that the Lord has done all of this mischief. So Mother Yashoda would mildly smile at all this fun, and she would not want to chastise her blessed transcendental child. So Mother Yashoda does not take any action. Upon hearing all of these complaints, she just tolerates all of the complaints and does not say a word. She just smiles. She doesn't believe them. She just smiles. So one day, the Lord was playing with the other Gopa boys, the children, along with Lord Balaram. One more complaint comes in. So Balaram, along with the other boys, come to Mother Yashoda. Maya, your Kanaya has eaten mud. That's the complaint. So when Mother Yashoda hears this, she becomes extremely disturbed. She thinks if he eats earth, he's going to fall sick. So now that she's heard from Krishna's playmates as well as Dauji Balaram, she decides she needs to address this matter right away. So she goes in search of Krishna. She's worried about his welfare, doing all of these things. She picks him up and she wants to chastise him. So she asks Lord Krishna, why are you so restless that you have eaten dirt in a solitary place? Meaning Krishna has been eating mud, thinking that nobody has watched him and nobody has caught him. He's doing it silently, in a very hidden manner. But other boys have noticed, and also Balaram has noticed. And then Mother Yashoda says, you know, this complaint has been lodged against you. Do you know who gave this complaint? Your own friends. And oh, by the way, among that includes Balaram. How is this? So she's asking Krishna, do you have a response to this complaint? What do you have to say about it? And Lord Krishna very calmly tells his mother, my dear mother, I have never eaten dirt. All my friends are complaining, who are complaining against me are liars. If you think they are being truthful, you can directly look into my mouth and examine it. So he is telling bold-facedly, he's telling Mother Yashoda, my friends are actually lying. You can check for yourself. Look at my mouth, examine it if you want. You're not going to find anything there. So Srila Prabhupada writes in this particular purport, very sweetly, Prabhupada writes, the Lord was lying about his own devotees to his devotee. The Lord was lying about his devotees to his topmost devotee. But he was doing that to extract the transcendental bliss, both for himself, as well as for Mother Yashoda, as well as for all of the Brajavasis. So the Lord, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, the Lord is only performing all of these activities to bring that sense of joy and bliss to the Brajavasis. There was no other reason. There was no other ulterior motive other than the sheer motive of these are my pure devotees who have come to associate with me. Let me give them the pleasure that they are seeking. Therefore, the Lord performs all of these mischievous activities. He lies bold-facedly about his own devotees. He's saying they're liars. And then he challenges his mother saying, well, if you know, and one of the other purports that Prabhupada writes here for this particular shloka is that, that Krishna is arguing, actually, my friends are jealous of me. They will lie against me so that they can see me being scolded by you. And therefore, they are going to get enjoyment when they see me scolded by you. And that is why they're lying to you. They're cooking up stories so that I can get into trouble with you. Actually, I have never eaten dirt. Therefore, they have to be lying because to them, they get pleasure if I get caught. That's why they're lying. This is one of the other commentaries in this particular shloka. So Mother Yashoda then challenges Krishna. She says, Acha, so you've not eaten any dirt? Acha, open your mouth wide. So when Mother Yashoda asks him to open his mouth wide, he does open his mouth wide, and he couldn't help himself again. He shows the entire cosmos, his entire Virat Rupa form in his mouth. So I will just read the particular shloka where Shukadev Goswami is describing what Mother Yashoda witnesses in the Lord's mouth. These are shlokas 37 to 39. When Krishna opened his mouth wide by the order of Mother Yashoda, she saw within his mouth all moving and non-moving entities, outer space, and all directions, along with mountains, islands, oceans, the surface of the earth, the blowing wind, fire, the moon, and the stars. She saw the planetary systems, water, light, air, sky, and creation by transformation of ahankara. She also saw the senses, the mind, sense perception, and the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance. She saw the time allotted for the living entities. She saw natural instinct and the reactions of karma. And she saw desires and different varieties of bodies, moving and non-moving. Seeing all these aspects of the cosmic manifestation, along with herself and Vrindavan Dham inside the Lord's mouth, she became doubtful and fearful of her son's nature. And in the next shloka, Shukadev Goswami continues. Mother Yashoda began to argue within herself. Is this a dream? Or is it an illusory creation by the external energy? Has this been manifested by my own intelligence? Or is it some mystic power of my child? Because she's in such a confused and bewildered state after seeing this, she begins to have doubts. And she expresses those doubts in the form of a prayer to her Supreme Lord Narayana. And therefore, she offers her prayers now because she has a doubt, is this really her child or is this some divine personality that she's dealing with? And I will just quickly read the prayers. Therefore, let me surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offer my obeisances unto him, who is beyond the conception of human speculation, the mind, activities, words, and arguments, who is the original cause of this cosmic manifestation, by whom the entire cosmos is maintained, and by whom we can conceive of its existence. Let me simply offer my obeisances, for he is beyond my contemplation, speculation, and meditation. He is beyond all of my material activities. And then in the next shloka, Mother Yashoda says, it is by the influence of the Supreme Lord's Maya that I am wrongly thinking that Nanda Maharaj is my husband, that Krishna is my son, and that because I am the queen of Nanda Maharaj, all the wealth of the cows and calves are my possessions, and all the cowherd men and their wives are my subjects. Actually, I also am eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord. He is my ultimate shelter. So when you read this particular purport, Prabhupada talks about what an important instruction Mother Yashoda has for us. We should never think that everything belongs to me. This is my husband, this is my child, this is my spouse, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. We have to be detached. Our only designation that we should remember is we are the servants of the Supreme Lord, and he is our only shelter. Nobody else can protect you. So like this, Mother Yashoda is offering her prayers. And Momentarily, she forgets that this is her child. She thinks this child has, she's reminded of what Gargamuni had said in the cowshed during the naming ceremony. And then Yogamaya pulls the curtain over her. So when she looks at Lord Krishna's face again, she completely forgets what she has seen in his mouth. Through the power of the Yogamaya potency of the Lord. And she immediately showers her love and affection on baby Krishna, and she's completely forgotten that he has actually eaten mud. So then Shukadev Goswami talks about how the Vedic scriptures say how you can approach the Lord through various processes, like the Sankhya Yoga process, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, etc. Having heard these pastimes, we are coming to the conclusion, so I'll be done in 10 minutes. Thank you for giving me the extra time. So having heard these pastimes, Parikshit Maharaj asks Sukadev Goswami a question. He says, if this is the Supreme Lord himself, what did Mother Yashoda do that the Lord accepted her as his mother and took her milk from her? Who are these personalities, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda? How did they come into this position where they could be the parents of the Supreme Lord? So he asked Shukadev Goswami, what are the past auspicious activities that Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj did to achieve such a perfection of ecstatic love for the Lord? And then Parikshit Maharaj says, actually, Krishna came as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. But they could not enjoy the Lord's childhood pastimes. But how is it that Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda actually enjoyed the Lord's childhood pastimes? And he says, because they were able to enjoy the Lord's childhood pastimes, we know that their position, which is Nanda Maharaj's position and Mother Yashoda's position, is superior to that of Vasudeva and Devaki's position. Because the Lord did not benedict Vasudeva and Devaki, although he appears to them, they do not witness his childhood pastimes. Why was that given to Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda? That's the question. And Shukadev Goswami talks about who these two personalities are. And I will just summarize very quickly, because there are quite a few shlokas. Essentially, they are Drona and Dhara. They are from Golok Vrindavan. And in the purports, if you read, Srila Prabhupada explains that this Drona and Dhara are eternally the Lord's only parents in Golok Vrindavan in the spiritual world. So that is their permanent position in the spiritual world, is to be the parents of the Supreme Lord. And so in one such situation, they have come out of the spiritual world and they worship Lord Brahma to have the Lord as their son, so that they could shower their love and affection on him as their son. So Vasudeva and Devaki also ask for a benediction. They simply ask, we want the Lord as our child, or we want someone like you as our child. That's their ask, actually. And Krishna says, there can be nobody, someone like me. It has to be me. But they did not ask for, we want him to be our child. They just said, we wanted someone like you as our child. Whereas the benediction sought by Drona and Dhara is that they wanted the Lord as their child and to also shower their love and affection of the child to interact with him. They also reveal that frequently they will come out of the spiritual world because they know that their son is about to appear to reestablish Dharma, and therefore they have to play the role of mother and father to the Supreme Lord. That is one of their prayers to Lord Brahma. We know that the Supreme Lord is about to appear. Therefore, we need to appear also, so that it appears that the Lord actually takes birth in the material world, when in reality, he never takes birth. So like this, they get the benediction from Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma tells them, even I don't get this benediction. You are asking me to give you something that I don't possess. But then my prayers for you, that your desire will be fulfilled because you're so sincere. And therefore, Brahma says tatastu, although it is not in his hands to give this benediction. Even with great difficulty, Lord Brahma gets to see Lord Krishna in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, where he becomes completely bewildered. So this is the position of the pure devotees. So Prabhupada writes in one of the purports to one of these shlokas here, that this is the difference between Nitya Siddhas and Sadhana Siddhas. Nitya Siddhas are eternally liberated souls. They never come into the material universe because of their past karmic reactions. They come to please the Supreme Lord. Whereas the Sadhana Siddhas, like you and me, we have to actually work on our sadhana in order to go back to the spiritual world. Whereas Drona and Dhara are actually Nitya Siddhas. Their eternal position in the spiritual world is to enjoy Vatsalya Bhav with the Supreme Lord as their son. Therefore, when the Lord has to appear, they also appear to fulfill the pastimes that the Lord benedicts on his other devotees. And Shukadeva Goswami says, thus the Supreme Personality Krishna, along with Balaram, lived in Vraja Bhumi Vrindavan just to substantiate the benediction of Brahma. By exhibiting different pastimes in his childhood, he increased the transcendental pleasure of Nanda and the other inhabitants of Vrindavan. Thus ends chapter 8 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, titled, The Lord Shows His Universal Form Within His Mouth. Hare Krishna.